What if the flood of Noah was far more terrifying than you were ever told? Not just rain, but the complete destruction of the world itself. The ground split apart. The oceans exploded upward. The skies collapsed in endless darkness. And in the middle of it all, one man built a giant wooden ark to carry the last surviving humans. But it wasn't easy. He was laughed at, he was mocked, and he was tested by humanity. But to understand why Noah built a huge ark, we must go back to the beginning of his story. The world had gone totally out of control. Everywhere you looked, people were hurting each other, and terrible violence had taken over every city, village, and home. It got so bad that God's heart broke, and he actually regretted making human beings in the first place. The corruption across the planet was absolute, except for one man. Noah was the last good person left. He walked with God, chose kindness when everyone else chose cruelty, and told the truth in a world built on lies. Because of that, God chose him for a task that sounded completely impossible. God spoke directly to Noah and delivered a terrifying warning. A flood was coming to destroy everything on the earth. But God offered a single shred of hope, giving Noah a specific rescue plan to build a massive wooden chest called an ark. This wasn't a normal boat built for sailing or steering. It was a giant, 3-story box designed purely to float and survive. The scale was staggering, longer than a football field and taller than a 4-story building. Noah had to build it out of gopher wood and seal every single crack inside and out with thick black tar called pitch. Without arguing or questioning the sheer madness of the project, Noah picked up his tools and got to work. For decades, Noah's life was defined by the sound of axes chopping trees and hammers pounding wood. He and his 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, spent years cutting down massive logs and hauling them across the dirt to build this giant mountain of wood. It sat right in the middle of dry land, miles from any ocean or lake. Naturally, his neighbors thought he had lost his mind. Every day people walked past the construction site to point, laugh, and mock the old man, warning about a sky that had never fallen. They kept right on partying, eating, drinking, and getting married, completely blind to reality. But Noah never stopped hammering, showing the world that he trusted God more than he feared their insults. When the giant fortress was finally finished, standing tall and windowless against the sky, the instructions changed. God told Noah it was time to collect the animals, 7 pairs of every clean animal and 1 pair of every unclean animal, along with the birds of the air. Noah didn't have to hunt them down with ropes and nets. Instead, a quiet miracle unfolded right before the eyes of the mocking townspeople. An unseen instinct guided creatures from the forests, deserts, and mountains straight to the ark. Predators walked peacefully right next to prey. Wolves alongside sheep and lions next to deer. Thousands of birds darkened the sky, flying straight into the upper decks. Once the lower levels were packed with tons of grain and food, Noah, his wife, his 3 sons, and his sons' wives walked away from the only world they had ever known. They stepped inside the dark, cavernous ship, surrounded by the heavy breathing of the animal kingdom. Then came the most chilling moment of the story. The Bible says that the Lord shut him in. Noah didn't close the door. God did it himself. With a massive, echoing slam, the hand of God sealed that giant door from the outside, locking the boundary between mercy and judgment. No one inside could open it, and no one outside could break it down. For 7 days, absolutely nothing happened. The ark just sat there in the quiet heat, and the neighbors likely had one last laugh, banging on the wooden hull and mocking Noah for trapping himself in a giant cage under a sunny sky. But on the 17th day of the second month, the laughter stopped instantly. The universe seemed to tear completely apart. It wasn't just a heavy rainstorm, it was a total breakdown of the Earth's geography. The springs of the Great Deep burst open, fracturing the ground and sending massive geysers of subterranean water erupting violently into the sky. At the exact same moment, the floodgates of heaven were ripped wide, pouring down a blinding, crushing sheet of water. Raging rivers swallowed the valleys in a matter of hours. People scrambled out of their homes in a panic, running toward the highest hills and climbing the tallest trees, watching the dark water rise relentlessly around them. Right before their eyes, the massive ark creaked, groaned, and lifted completely off the ground, floating perfectly on top of the violent tide. The door was locked, and the water kept coming. For 40 days and 40 nights, the water never stopped falling from the sky or erupting from the ground. It rose higher and higher, swallowing the hills, drowning the forests, and eventually covering the tops of the tallest mountains on Earth by more than 20 feet. Every single living thing on dry land perished. The birds, the cattle, the wild beasts, and all of humanity were completely gone, erased from the face of the earth. The world was turned right back into what it looked like before creation. Just a vast, dark, featureless ocean with no land in sight. Inside the ark, the world was incredibly small, dark, and terrifyingly loud. The massive ship was constantly tossed around by giant waves, creaking under the unbelievable pressure of a global ocean. For 150 days, the water completely dominated the planet. Noah and his family were suspended in the middle of a global graveyard, separated from a watery death by just a few inches of pitched wood. They couldn't look out of a side window to see where they were going because there were no landmarks left. There was only the endless, exhausting daily routine of feeding the animals, shoveling waste in the dark, and listening to the water smash against the hull. In those long, pitch-black months, it would have been so easy for despair to take over. Noah must have wondered if they were going to float out there until they ran out of food. Had God forgotten about them? Were they doomed to be the last humans alive, trapped in a wooden box forever? But then, the story takes a beautiful turn. The ancient texts say, "But God remembered Noah." This doesn't mean God forgot about Noah like a misplaced pair of keys. It means God was now ready to act on his promise. He sent a powerful wind blowing across the surface of the earth, and the waters finally stopped rising. The underground springs were blocked, the floodgates of heaven were locked tight, and the rain finally stopped falling from the black sky. Slowly, day by day, the water level began to drop. Exactly 5 months after the flood started, the ark finally came to a sudden, gentle stop. It didn't crash into a rock or split open. It settled right on top of the mountains of Ararat. The long, violent journey of floating across a dead world was over, but they still couldn't leave. They had to wait for months as the water continued to drain away, slowly revealing the jagged tops of nearby mountains, like little islands rising out of a retreating sea. After 40 more days of waiting, Noah decided it was time to test the world outside. He opened a small window at the top of the ark and released a raven. The raven is a strong, tough scavenger bird, and it just flew back and forth, landing on floating debris and dead matter, never coming back to stay, because the earth was still covered in water. Noah realized he needed a better test, so he sent out a dove. A dove is a completely different kind of bird. It needs clean, dry ground and living plants to survive. The first time the dove flew out, it found absolutely nowhere to land, so it flew straight back to the ark. Noah reached his hand out of the window, pulled the tired little bird back inside, and waited another 7 days. He released the dove a second time. The family waited all day, staring up at the small window in the ceiling. In the evening, the dove flew back through the opening, and this time it had something in its beak, a freshly plucked olive leaf. That tiny green leaf was the very first sign of life from the new world. It meant the valleys were finally clearing, trees were growing again, and the judgment was officially over. Noah waited 7 more days and sent the dove out a third time. This time, it never came back. It had found a permanent home in a reborn creation. Finally, when Noah was 601 years old, the water was completely gone. Noah reached up and removed the heavy top covering of the ark, looking out at the world for the first time in over a year. The landscape was completely unrecognizable. The grand cities, the violent kingdoms, and the broken societies were gone without a trace. In their place was a quiet, muddy, empty earth, completely wiped clean and waiting to start over. Then, the voice of God spoke to Noah with the words he had been waiting more than 370 days to hear. Come out of the ark, you and your wife and your sons and their wives. Bring out every living creature, so they can multiply on the earth and be fruitful. The massive door was opened, and Noah's family stepped out onto solid ground. Imagine that first breath of fresh air, the feeling of real dirt beneath their feet, and the warmth of the sun after a year of living in a dark, cramped ship. The animals came pouring out of the hull, running, jumping, and flying into the hills and valleys. The very first thing Noah did in this brand new world wasn't building a house for himself or planting crops. Instead, he built an altar to the Lord. He took some of the clean animals and birds and offered them as a sacrifice of thanksgiving. He wanted to show God how incredibly grateful they were to be alive, recognizing that their survival wasn't because they were perfect, but because of pure mercy. And God made a beautiful, binding promise to Noah and his family. He looked at humanity and acknowledged that even though people would still make mistakes and battle with bad thoughts, he would never again destroy the entire earth with a flood. As long as the earth endures, God promised, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night will never cease.
These videos take many hours to make. If you could, please like and subscribe. Also, we want to know which countries our viewers are watching this video from. Please comment the country you are watching from. Thank you. Until the next video.